Oh, hi. It's your boy Tim, coming to you from under a tree. This is the third time that I start recording this video because the past few times someone's walked by and I get very self-conscious, as you know, about filming these things in public. So I think I'm alone now, so I can do it without feeling self-conscious. But who knows, maybe the version that goes out will be the fourth time or the fifth time. We'll see. So you might have noticed that there wasn't a new episode of God or Whatever on the 1st of November, as there has been every other month so far this year. And I don't think there will be one on the 1st of December either. I thought that was a person, but it was just a squirrel. I've struggled a little bit with getting these organised, to be honest with you, for a number of reasons. One is just kind of struggling to find guests. I think part of the reason for that is a couple of months ago I had that brilliant conversation with Jesse Thorne, and Jesse, being a relatively well-known guy in the podcasting world, brought some of his audience over to this podcast, and that really bumped the numbers up. So I went from maybe 30, 40, 50 downloads per episode to, for that episode, I think last time I checked, which was a while ago, it was up to about 2,000, which was awesome. Like, it was really cool, and really great to see, you know, a couple of comments on the YouTube video and that kind of stuff. Yeah, that was really super fun, and I'm still really grateful to Jesse for having been up for taking part. The downside of that is that it's kind of, I guess maybe slightly raised my expectations in terms of what this podcast can do, who it can have on as guests and that kind of thing. So I've kind of spent the past couple of months really reaching out to lots of people with slightly bigger platforms than I was used to before the Jesse conversation, and it turns out most people aren't quite as generous as Jesse is. No criticism of those people, but for the most part I haven't heard back, and for those people who have heard back, they've all been super nice, but have politely declined. So I think that's kind of part of the reason that the Jesse conversation really raised the bar for me in terms of, I guess, looking for a bigger audience, which would have been cool, but it hasn't really taken off the way that I wanted it to. So that's part of the reason, is that maybe I've been aiming to, I don't want to say too high, because that implies that people without an audience aren't as good at guests, but I've been aiming to big, maybe, in terms of who I've kind of been asking to be guests on the show. Another reason is, if you've been listening for a while, you'll know that I started a new job recently, now I guess 2.5 months ago, as a hospital chaplain, and I am growing into loving that job. Again, if you've listened to previous episodes of this, you'll probably know certainly the first couple of weeks, probably even the first month, 6 weeks, felt completely shell-shocked by it and overwhelmed by just how hard a job it is. But as I'm beginning to get used to it, beginning to get used to the pace, and beginning to get used to some of the situations that you face in that kind of a job, I'm discovering that I really love it and that it's really meaningful. And I think I can say that I'm quite good at it. So that's awesome. But despite all that positive stuff, it's really fucking tiring. I get home in the afternoons after work and just feel like I just want to kind of crash on the sofa and listen to other people's podcasts rather than making my own. Sound of plane going overhead, sound of siren off in the distance. So between kind of my slightly raised expectations for what I can achieve with this podcast and the busyness and tiringness of the new job, I just haven't got very far in booking guests. And I guess, I started this podcast during lockdown, during COVID, and I really needed it. I needed it for a number of reasons. One is, the kind of God talk, spirituality talk, religion talk that we do on this podcast is something I really love. I find it fascinating, and creating spaces in which you can have open, thoughtful conversations without trying to evangelize, to convert, to win a debate or whatever, but just to hear from people whose views are different to you and learn from them. I love doing that, and I find it very fulfilling. And also during lockdown, I was lonely. I live alone, and I was working from home. And so I really needed something to give that time meaning, I guess, to make it feel like something positive, to make it feel like something that could add value to my life. And the podcast really, really fulfilled that. And now I'm in a really different place to where I was when this started, I guess just over a year ago. I'm in a job where I have those kinds of conversations all the time, every day, with patients, with staff, with friends and family who are interested in my job and what I do. So those kinds of open God talk, spirituality talk kind of conversations are part of my life now. I don't need to organize a podcast to have those anymore, which is awesome. And I am in a job which is the hardest job I've ever done by a long way. Certainly the most emotionally demanding job I've ever done, but also by a really long way the most meaningful job I've ever done. Every conversation I have as a chaplain, with people who are facing their own mortality, with people who have lost their loved ones, with people who are grieving, with people who are frightened of what the future holds after a scary diagnosis, whatever it is so meaningful. There's no bullshit in those conversations, because the bullshit's been stripped away. When you're scared or lonely or whatever, you're not worried about pretense, about saying the right things or about looking good. So those conversations feel really sincere. And anyway, what I'm saying is that the meaning, the itch that this podcast scratched is being scratched now by my job, by what I do for a living. And that's not to say everything's awesome now. Like I say, the job's hard and I'm tired a lot. Also, anxiety sucks, and that's been particularly bad over the past kind of couple of months. Although I think I'm moving in a good direction with it. I'm seeing a psychotherapist now, and I'm hopefully going to get on some medication to help with that and that kind of thing. Anyway, whatever, that's an aside, it doesn't really matter. The point is, well, like I said, that the itch that the podcast scratched for me is being scratched now by the job, and that's really cool. So, where am I going with this? I guess where I'm going with it is that I'm probably not going to be uploading 2 episodes of God or Whatever every month, as I have been for the past few months. Well, I'm definitely not going to be doing that. I have got some kind of open conversations going with people who might potentially be future guests on the show. So I don't want to say that this is the end of God or Whatever, because, my motivation might change, and if some really cool guests start presenting themselves, then I want to make more episodes. Basically, I want to keep on doing that. It's okay. There's no one there. So where I'm going with it is, I guess what I'm saying, I'm just gonna give myself a bit of a break with God or Whatever. I'm gonna upload episodes as and when I have something to say, or have a good guest who has something to say, rather than being stuck in a kind of release schedule of twice a month. If this was a job, if I had the resources to invest more time and money into the podcast, then that release schedule would be awesome. I would love to do that. But I'm struggling to do it alongside work and looking after myself and all that kind of thing. So I'm just going to play it by ear, basically. The other thing I want to put a question to you guys, really, to the people who are watching this or listening to this, which is to ask, like, what do you think? Do you want, what would you enjoy in terms of kind of content from this podcast? More interviews, more of these kinds of little mini reflections, something completely different that I haven't even thought about, or just end it. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear, because I can name maybe 15 people who I know listen to this, but the podcasting app tells me that since the Jesse Thorne episode, there's about 150, 200 people who listen to this. So who are you? Why are you listening to it? What does it do for you? And what would you like me to do more of? I can't guarantee that I'll be able to do what you want, but I'd just love to know, what's the appeal? What would you find interesting? What would you find entertaining going ahead? You can, obviously, if we're friends already, you know how to get in touch with me. But if I don't know you, you can message me on Instagram. Tim S. Leeson is my name on that, TimSleeson. And you can email the show, godorwhatever@outlook.com. That's not an email I've really promoted because, I don't think I've ever mentioned it on the show before, but you have to have one to set up a page on Apple Podcasts. So feel free to email that, godorwhatever@outlook.com. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to know what you have found interesting and worth listening to about this, and what you would find interesting and worth listening to going ahead. But in the meantime, this isn't, like I say, I don't want to say this is the end of God or Whatever, but it's certainly the end for now of the 2 episode a month format. It's just going to be a bit more ad hoc going ahead. There might be future guests, there might not be. There might be future mini reflections like this, there might not be. We'll see how we go. So that's it. I think that's all I have to say, really. My other podcast, Joy Story, which I do with my friend Dan, that's still going ahead, so do tune into that. Dan is a really great friend and also a psychotherapist, and we talk about stuff with a kind of, Dan representing the views of psychotherapy and me representing the views of spirituality, religion, theology, that kind of stuff. And I really enjoy doing it. So we're gonna keep on doing that. That requires a lot less organization than this one, and it's nice because I'm doing it with a friend as well. Do follow that, Joy Story. Just search for it in your podcasting apps. That one's not on YouTube. That's audio only, but you'll find us there. And in the meantime, from God or Whatever, I guess bye for now. And I'll see you when I see you. But do get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, I probably won't put out an episode before Christmas anymore. So have a good Christmas if you're a Christmas person, and have a good kind of winter if you're not a Christmas person. I hope you stay safe, and I hope that you're not alone and you're with people who you love and who love you. And if you're not with people who you love and who love you, then send me a message on the aforementioned contact details, and I will tell you that I love you. Okay, all the best. Thanks so much for listening to this or watching this. Thanks for making this a two-way conversation. I don't just mean this episode, I mean this show. And that's it. Okay, take care. Farewell.